You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on iTunes and at facebook.com/DCAU Review. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 9 of the DCAU Review. I'm your host, Cal, along with me as always, good friend, brother, co-host, and the guy that runs our Twitter account, Liam. Liam, welcome to the DCAU Review, episode 9.
Always glad to be back here. Love doing the show. Got an interesting episode to talk about, because this is a hard one to grade.
Yeah, we made it through this episode. So, episode 9 of the DCAU Review is covering episode...
9?
9! Oh, we're back on track now.
Yes, thanks to our Phantasm review,
Thanks.
we are back on in numerical harmony.
That's right. So, chronologically, episode 9 of Batman the Animated Series here is indeed Be a Clown, which is... yet another Joker episode, Liam. We are 1/3 of our episodes thus far feature the Joker, and one of those episodes actually was a movie. So 1/3 of our episodes, and this is actually the third out of. Or is this the third episode of Batman the Animated Series that features the Joker as well? Yeah, because we had Be a
Fourth
Clown.
if you count the dream sequence in Forgotten.
There you go. So, another Joker-heavy episode, so let's jump right into it here. The plot of this episode revolves around Mayor Hamilton Hill, who gets his first feature role in an episode. He was featured a little bit in past episodes as a supporting character, but this is a main episode that features him and his son Jordan, who you mentioned does not at all look like a child. I believe he's supposed to be 7 or 8 years old, and he looks like a
43-year-old CEO. He looks like a lawyer.
You mentioned very early on that he and the mayor share the same receding hairline.
Yeah, it's like what 8-year-old boy has like slicked back receding hair.
We can talk about that, I guess, when we get to animation. But regardless, it's a very kid-friendly plot. It centers around a child running away because his parent treats him like crap. He's throwing this birthday party for him that is really in my notes, I just wrote, Mayor Hill sucks as a dad. Like, that's what you could summarize this episode as. He loses track of his son. His son throws a tantrum in the middle of his birthday party, runs away. He doesn't bother to go after him, and because of that, he stows away in the Joker's stolen Joker van and ends up hanging out with the Joker for a couple hours.
This is like worst dad in the history of animation. Like, he's way up there.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I guess we can just jump right into plot.
Yeah.
It's a really simple story. The Joker sees a newscast where Mayor Hill compares Batman to the Joker, and that makes
he takes it personally.
And Joker takes it and is angry and wants to exact some sort of revenge on Mayor Hill,
which feeds a little bit into the Joker character. I think we agree.
Yeah,
it makes sense. He's insane. We talked about
Yes.
the killer versus the clown. A normal person would be insulted and may get into the person's face or have an argument with them or try to smear them some other way. But Joker just decides, because he doesn't like being compared to Batman, he's going to kill the mayor. Which is very
and all
Joker.
his friends.
And all his friends, too.
So that's a very solid Joker plot. But from there, it sort of devolves into happenstance.
Yeah, how did he figure out, by the way, that Jekyll the Clown was going to be at this party? Mayor Hill doesn't mention it, that he's throwing a party for his son. It just happens that way.
Right.
It's very much happenstance.
As well as, yes, Jordan, the Mayor Hill's son, then stows away on the Joker's getaway van and sort of tells him that he wants to be just like him, and Joker mentions that he's been thinking about taking on a protege, which I guess we can pretend is some sort of a reference to Harley, but not really at all.
Yeah.
And from there, Batman or Bruce Wayne overhears another television, a lot of newscast overhearing in this episode, and where Batman hears the Joker as Jekyll mention a specific magician.
Well, there just happened to be a guy that was videotaping
Yes.
the mayor's birthday party for his son, who got Jekyll, a.k.a. the Joker, making the joke, and Batman recognizes the laugh.
Right. And then he
And then he sees the poster of
Right.
Prosciutto, the great prosciutto.
Yes.
There was a ham, as the Joker said.
Yes, and from there, Batman sort of gets to these fairgrounds or this abandoned carnival, I guess.
Yeah, never fleshed out.
And it's interesting because, like, I mean, that was if anyone's ever read or watched the animated movie of The Killing Joke, like that's where the Joker is holed up in that.
Okay,
so that's kind of like they could have done a little bit more, I think, with that environment.
Sure.
And they don't really.
They've been playing on some of that in The Dark Knight Returns too. There's a scene where he's involved in a carnival.
When they're in the Tunnel of Love.
Yeah.
Where they sort of have one of their final.
Ironically, there's also I believe there is a roller coaster scene in that too.
Yes.
Where there's some fighting going on. Exploding baby dolls also happen in that one.
So that may be some referencing there as
homage
they were doing, but. Yeah, so it's just there's not a lot going on plot wise. Like I said, it's the parts that work are sort of the Joker's motivation. He's the type of guy that would get upset by a passing comment and decide to kill you for it. Yeah. So that works. So I gave plot 4 out of 10. It's not the worst episode of the series by any measure, and it's a pretty fun episode overall. But we come from some episodes that are really diving deep in, or certainly with the movie last week, or the last time with the. Phantasm. This is very light. This is sort of cotton candy.
Yeah,
it's very light. It's very, but it's harmless. It's a fun little episode. But not a great. Nobody was winning any Emmys for this one.
Very true. Yeah, I think we were talking before we went on the air just a little bit that every episode can't be a super deep and delve into the psychology and psyche of Batman. There has to be some breathing room.
Sure.
And there's plenty of room in this series for episodes like this, like The Last Laugh, that are just straightforward and just maybe there's some happenstance, there's some fun, there's some goofiness, and Batman saves the day. So, for that reason, there was some head scratching moments, like that nobody at the party recognized that the Joker's face was on the candle for the birthday cake when he places it in there. Like, oh, that's weird. One of the city's biggest criminals is featured on this candle that looks an awful lot like a stick of dynamite.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, some of the how Batman figures stuff out. I thought there was a cool little. I guess foreshadowing, whether it was intentional or not, with the Batman kind of as Houdini, where he's tied up with, there's an episode later in the series that features Zatanna where, that water trick is used. So, a little bit of foreshadowing, a little bit of talking about that. However, Batman would not have escaped this if it wasn't for Jordan. So Jordan saved the day.
Let's
true. Just remember, he saved his life. Liam, how long was he holding his breath?
I timed it. It's a little over 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think he's breaking some Guinness Book of World Records there, holding his breath.
It's pretty incredible. That's something we as kids would always do when there was underwater scenes, or there's an episode later where Clayface starts suffocating Batman, where you would try to hold your breath as long as Batman held his breath, and
if you tried to do it in this episode, you
would die.
Yeah,
you would pass out. So it's fine. It's like I said, I gave it a 4 out of 10. It's not lighting the world on fire, but as you mentioned, that's not always necessarily a bad thing. Right. What did you give it?
I gave it 5 out of 10 for all those reasons. It's just okay. It's a big bowl of okay. All right, moving on. We're going to animation next. So there's some cool little tricks that they do in this episode as far as animation is concerned. The very first scene, there's a sort of like a panorama that moves around Mayor Hill as he's at this podium giving a speech. It was cool. Gives it a 3-dimensional feel.
Yeah.
And it was done. It was not digital. As we talked about, the digital animation wasn't really being used at this time, or wasn't really included. So the fact that they did that with your traditional animation was cool. However, there's a lot of inconsistency in this episode. The final scene with the roller coaster battle is the best animated part of the scene, but this episode draws a lot of parallels in animation between this and the Pretty Poison episode, just where there's stuff that looks good, or that looks really good, but there's just so many like glaringly obvious just goofy drawings. We mentioned already Jordan's character design, his receding hairline, and the fact that he resembles an adult male. It's and I get it. It's probably hard to animate children. We already talked about that in that Why do we keep referencing the Underdwellers?
Stop it.
Sorry. But in that episode, we talked about how the children designed in that episode don't look very good. It's just, I guess it's something harder for them to animate. It's hard. How do you properly communicate that via drawing? I don't know. But I gave it 4 out of 10. I thought that there's a scene where Joker puts he's working with a fortune teller machine, and that in order to figure out how to kill Batman,
yes.
somehow he's rigged this fortune teller machine to tell him how to kill Batman. I
like that idea though.
Yeah,
like it just spits out different deaths. Like one will be like death by piranhas, one will be shoot him,
and he leaves it to chance because he's just crazy. So I thought that looked good. The scene where they come back from, which would have been a commercial break, and Batman's upside down, and you don't recognize that he's upside down until you start to see the water coming from the bottom of the screen, or from the top of the screen to the bottom, and then the camera kind of flips around. I thought that was done pretty well. Also, the smoke from the baby grenades, when he's throwing those up, that was very Max Fleischer. You know me, I love a good Max Fleischer nod.
Oh, yeah.
So that was animated really well. With that said, too much inconsistency. Not very good throughout most of the episode. The inconsistencies, the bad, far outweighs the good in this episode. So I gave it 4 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I went 3 out of 10. Basically what you said. That's the inconsistency of it all is it kind of lets you down. It would have been even lower though, because like you mentioned, there are the scene at the end where he's chasing the Joker on the roller coaster. Mm-hmm. Which I mostly remember because it was the boss fight for the Joker in the Super Nintendo Batman: The Adventures of Batman and Robin video game.
Yep.
So that scene does hold some sort of special.
He doesn't throw babies in that.
No,
he throws little like round ball bombs.
Yeah, and Batman throws his little bat bombs back at him.
That's right. Yeah.
And you jump back and forth between the 2 roller coasters.
I remember that, yeah.
So that's a little extra nostalgia nugget there. Sure. That sort of maybe that props it up. So the roller coaster scene's pretty well animated, and you mentioned the sort of the 360 shot of Mayor Hill at the beginning, but a lot of this episode is there's the shot at the end when Mayor Hill and his son are reunited. Mayor Hill's like less than a foot taller than his 8-year-old son, and. So I just there's some sizing issues. There's just a lot of
his son grew up.
Yes,
this episode.
Apparently.
That's what we learned. His 42-year-old son is now a 48-year-old son. Okay.
Yes. So
experience has led him to grow.
So yeah, it's definitely not one of the ones I would throw out if someone asked me, hey, pick me some episodes that would really showcase the greatness of this animation. This is definitely not one of those.
I agree.
So yeah, I went 3 out of 10 on that.
All right. Moving right along, let's head over to the voice acting, Liam. Another Joker episode. We've said a lot about Mark Hamill as it is, but anything in this episode that you enjoyed specifically with voice acting?
You mentioned this, and you can talk about it a little bit more, but he does a really good job. He puts on a voice as Jekko.
Yeah, it's sort
got
of like
a lisp.
It's a lisp and a New York sort of accent, accent a little bit.
Brooklyn-y.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of really good parts where he's doing the Jekko voice because he doesn't reveal to Jordan that he's the Joker until like about 3 minutes in the episode is left.
Yeah.
And so he's mostly doing this Jekko voice, and then the kid will say something that pisses him off or something, and he'll snap into the Joker voice. Quiet, kid, it's a free ticket.
Right.
And it's just really nice, and it's a little added. You mentioned that how did people not realize that this candle was the Joker? But at least Jekko himself, they came up with a pretty unique design. He doesn't look like the Joker really
at all. He has a fake nose and a fake hairline and all that stuff.
Yeah, so they did do a pretty good job, and Mark Hamill does a good job with his voice talents of sort of differentiating and playing a character while playing another character.
Absolutely.
A lot of layers to that. So, yeah, it's absolutely the Mark Hamill show. Batman says about 20 words in this episode.
And every line he delivers is a bad joke. Like, I love puns. I'm a pun enthusiast like my grandfather before me. Absolutely. But every pun in this it's bad. It just takes you out. It's like, that's not how Batman talks. Why is he talking? This isn't Adam West.
Yeah.
Like, we're supposed to take this Batman serious. He makes a line that he throws some goons in the garbage. He's like, garbage day isn't until Tuesday, but for you, I'll make an exception. Like, All right, and then, there's 2 or 3 that he does with the Joker.
It's like it's somewhere between Adam West and like cheesy like Stallone 80s like action movie one-liner. And that's basically most of his lines, but we do get the very famous, if you're on the interwebs, you've seen the gif of Batman giving the thumbs up from this show, and that is where this show comes from. That's where that
at least
gif
we have
comes
that.
from. So yes, this is a meme. A meme episode.
There we go.
There's a few other ones that we'll get to throughout the series
Sure.
that have sort of become famous on the internet, and
Yeah.
and this is one of them. It's the Bat thumbs up
Bat
episode.
thumbs up.
But as far as the voice acting goes, like I said, it's mostly the Mark Hamill show. I gave it 6 out of 10.
Okay.
I think he's very good. Mayor Hill, who's voiced by Lloyd Bachner, is pretty solid in that role. I mean, his role is to play a sort of out of touch, snooty
Politician.
politician, and
who cares more about his voters and how he appears.
In his image, he's yelling at the photographer to make sure he got a shot of him shaking the senator's hand and stuff like that, and he's very schmoozy. So I thought he did a good job, and I thought that Jordan did a decent job as well. So I went 6 out of 10. Again, not the greatest showcase, but
Certainly.
pretty solid. What about you?
Yeah, I gave voice acting a 7 out of 10 for all those reasons that we mentioned with the Joker. He's great. This is a great showcase for Mark Hamill. He's the main voice, like you said. Not a lot of Batman in this episode. Hamill carries the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Lloyd Bachner as Mayor Hill. This isn't his finest hour. There's an episode later on with the Clock King that he's featured pretty heavily in that I think showcases him a little bit better. But it's a nice introduction to try and flesh out that character a little bit.
I don't think we ever see Jordan again, do we?
Nope, thank God. Don't see how
He died of old age shortly after this.
he had reverse Benjamin Buttons. Okay. Which actually I think reverse Benjamin Buttons is just old age.
Yes.
With that said, Jordan actually for a child actor, pretty good. Like I bought him as a kind of innocent child. If I wish his character design was a little bit better. That's all.
Yeah.
So for all those reasons, I give it a 7 out of 10. Joker is great. It's a great showcase of the Joker. Lots of Joker puns. Lots of switching back and forth, like you mentioned, between his Jekyll voice and Joker voice, and it's good. Good stuff there. All right. Last category. Let's tackle music. As we said, we kind of blew through this episode. I didn't have a whole lot of notes to take.
Yeah.
And music was one that I really didn't notice, which we talked about before in a couple of the other episodes. That's not always a bad thing. It may just mean that it was, it just wasn't needed. I would say in this case, because the plot was a little bit weaker, and that the animation was a little bit bad, that this is an episode that could have used a musical accompaniment to kind of boost it a little bit. We talked about in the last laugh, that episode is near and dear to me because of the soundtrack. It's phenomenal. I could pop on that soundtrack from that episode and just listen to that straight through, and I'd be happy. I love that episode because of it. We talked about it on the last episode that we covered, which was The Forgotten, the importance and the nostalgia that makes you think about when you hear that harmonica, and just what it adds to that episode, taking an episode that otherwise would be maybe middle of the road, maybe pretty bad, and it kind of bumps it up a little bit. You're like, actually, this is really good. It's got it adds. It's a plot device. This episode, I think, really could have used that. For example, it's not really noticeable. There's one part where Jordan runs away, where it kind of adds to it a little bit. It's like, oh, if you're a child, whether you're a child or an adult, you're like, oh, this kid's running away from his parent. Like, this isn't going to be good at all.
Right.
And then, of course, they infuse the Batman theme at the end when he saves Jordan. That always is a good way of kind of putting a bow on things, as it were. But for all of that, it's really forgettable. The music is not an important part. I don't even remember a Joker theme being used in the episode. It may very well have been, but that just goes to show you it wasn't enough for me to remember. So I gave music 2 out of 10. How about you?
Yeah, I went 5 out of 10. Like I said, it's pretty middle of the road. I think it swells decently. It adds a little bit of drama to the final fight, the roller coaster scene, and as you mentioned, sort of the triumphant Batman theme that plays at the very end of the episode. So I think there are moments in there that add a little bit. But yeah, this 5 out of 10 is sort of my score for when it doesn't take away, but it doesn't add.
Sure.
So yeah, for me, this was really it's certainly not a showcase again for the music. I think I mentioned that with a couple other categories. This isn't necessarily an episode I would sit somebody down and be like, if you want to understand why I love this, watch this one.
Yeah.
Because again, not that it's bad at all.
It's
a very enjoyable watch.
It's a good, if you have 22 minutes to sit down and you want to watch a Joker-centered episode that isn't the last laugh, okay, watch this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I went 5 out of 10 for music. It's pretty middle of the road, but
cool.
yeah, it's sometimes like as we mentioned, the score doesn't always reflect how enjoyable the episode is. We mentioned that with Christmas with the Joker and a few others that are maybe that'll just end up being a lot of Joker episodes, but
so many Joker episodes early on.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of opportunity to talk about the Joker episodes to see if that pattern holds up or not.
We shall see indeed. All right, so overall score, adding things up here at the end, I went ahead and gave this a 18 out of 40. How about you?
And I am dead even with you there, 18 out of 40.
All right, look at us.
I think that's the first time we've ever exactly agreed
on
a score.
Yeah, and it's funny because we ended up coming up with a score and giving things higher and lower in different categories. But yeah, it's like we said, this is a case where the score doesn't indicate that it's a bad episode. It's just an okay episode. Nothing wrong with it. Could have been better, but could also be far worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would watch this episode about 300,000 times before I'd watch The Underdwellers.
Stop talking about it.
Sorry. All right, folks. With that, we're going to wrap things up here. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. If there's something that you found in this episode that you like, that you dislike, something that we overlooked, maybe you think we're being a little too hard on it. Maybe you really enjoyed this episode. Maybe Jordan to you doesn't look like a 49-year-old gentleman with a receding hairline. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear it. Tweet Liam. He runs our Twitter account at DCAU Review. Love to get some good feedback on it. Some great interaction going on there. Also, make sure you like us on Facebook, facebook.com/DCAU Review. That's the fastest way to learn about our brand new episodes when they're posted. Or you can also subscribe to us on iTunes. They'll be delivered to your computer immediately as soon as they're uploaded. And we would always appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes because that helps us out immensely as a podcast. So if you can, take 2 minutes, give us a 5-star review on iTunes, and we will certainly thank you for that. Anything else, Liam?
Like you always said, I like to hammer it home. Love talking with people on Twitter about this stuff or Facebook. So
we're
definitely,
a pair of nerds.
Yeah, absolutely. We love talking about this. Obviously, you just listened to us talk about it for 23 minutes. We love talking about
an episode that we thought was just okay.
Right. So we always love the opportunity to talk about it, even if you think we're dead wrong about this or whatever. We're happy to talk about it with anybody. Just any excuse to talk about this stuff is great for me.
Certainly, absolutely. You know what, Liam? We didn't even have the opportunity to talk about cape movement this episode.
There wasn't really any.
I know you're disappointed. Hopefully next week.
Sad.
Next week's will be a 2-parter covering Two-Face, so maybe there'll be some cape movement.
Fingers crossed.
All right. With that, I am Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will catch you guys on the next episode.
Goodbye.